In this video, I'm going to provide an overview of the final exam assignment for this course. So the final exam assignment is asking you to write a teaching rationale answering the question, what do you teach social studies for? This assignment counts for 20% of the course grade, and the final version of the assignment is due on June 30th before midnight. So what's the purpose of a rationale? The purpose of a teaching rationale is to have an ever-evolving document or vision that grounds your purposes for teaching in an easily accessible format. Rationales provide us with a forum for showing ourselves and others what we teach for in the classroom and for the purposes of this assignment, the social studies. They serve as a window into what we do in the classroom and our defense as to the curricular and pedagogical decisions we make. Now, a teaching rationale in an education course would be written down. It can also be discussed, and it can be changed over time, even in the midst of one course. When you are a classroom teacher, you will likely not have a written rationale. It'll be in your head, but you should always have some idea of what it is you're teaching toward and for, and designing your curriculum to help you answer or help you teach toward those objectives. This is helpful when trying to make an argument with administrators, other teachers as to what it is you do in your classroom and why. So the assignments and goals of this assignment is to allow you, the pre-service teacher, to fully consider your purposes for teaching social studies and to apply what you've learned in the course. In particular, this assignment highlights 3 course goals, namely construct an identity as a professional educator by examining closely the assumptions, beliefs, and values that underlie what and how you teach social studies, to apply theoretical knowledge and practical pedagogical knowledge to plan, teach, and assess personal performance, and to also articulate clear and defensible rationales for curricular and instructional decision-making. You can use any assignment that you've done in this class to complete the final exam, such as primary and secondary readings, course meeting activities and discussions, and course assignments such as critical summaries, projects, lesson plans. So as I noted at the beginning of this video, your intent is to answer the question of what are you teaching social studies for and how might you accomplish this goal? I suggest, and the rubric is divided up based on the suggestion, for you to divide your paper into 4 sections: an introduction, a section on your overarching goal, a section on how you will achieve that goal, and a conclusion. Below are some questions you might consider. However, you should not construct your paper around responses to these individual questions. Questions such as, what do you want students to take away from your classroom beyond content knowledge? What might your classroom environment and student learning look like if someone visited your classroom? And how might social studies serve as the integrating core of your curriculum rather than a subject placed on the back burner? In your 5 to 6 page minimum paper, you should have a clear introduction that sets the tone for the remainder of the paper, 2 sections that individually address the overarching goal and how you will accomplish this goal, and a conclusion that appropriately concludes the paper in light of that goal and the accomplishments addressed. There are some specific requirements you must meet in this assignment. In terms of page length, undergraduate students must have a minimum of 5 pages. Grad students must have a minimum of 6 pages. Use Times New Roman font, 12-point font. Use double spacing throughout with no excess spacing between paragraphs. Have 1-inch margins. Use APA 6th edition style. And if you are uncertain about APA 6th edition style, I encourage you to go to the OWL Purdue website for APA 6th edition. And there are very specific directions and guidance for how to use APA in a paper. And you also must have 4 references. These must come from peer-reviewed texts, like the practitioner and research articles and chapters you're reading in this class, or from, for instance, the textbook that you're reading in the class. You cannot use non-reviewed sources such as websites, even if they're a university website that provides base information about an idea. Those have not been peer-reviewed. So you must use a professional published source. A good tool to use to find peer-reviewed text is Google Scholar or the university library. Now, in terms of the references, you have to have a minimum of 4 references. All 4 references can come from your textbook by Parker and Beck, but if you want 4 references to count individually from the textbook, they must come from 4 different chapters, and you must cite appropriately. Saying Parker and Beck 4 times will not give you credit. That gives you credit for one reference. So you can either have all your references from Parker and Beck's textbook. You can have 4 different articles cited and quoted. That's up to you as to how you're going to use your references. Now, I will say that students who do go above and beyond in page length and in use of referencing and quoting sources and connecting to ideas learned in class, they tend to do better on this assignment. So these are minimums that you must meet, not the maximums. I would also encourage you to use the grade level that you used in your lesson plans as the basis for the assignment so that there's some flow. You can highlight the ideas that you were raising in your lesson plans and maybe even some ideas that you highlighted in critical summaries. But be careful not to plagiarize yourself. That is a possible thing. Do not copy and paste text from a critical summary or from a lesson plan. Make sure if you're going to highlight an idea you raised in something you wrote in class that you are changing up the writing, you're paraphrasing, it's new text in the final exam. In terms of due dates, you have a brainstorm session due in Module 2. In Module 3, you have an outline that you'll have to write. In Module 4, there are 2 due dates. First is Friday, June 14th, which is a 1-page draft of your paper. And then on the 16th, you'll also have to conduct peer reviews of those in your group. You also have a 2-page draft due on June 23rd that I will review and give you feedback on. And then you have your final submission due on June 30th before midnight. Those 4 draft stages, the brainstorm session, the rationale outline session, the initial draft and peer review, and the rough draft, account for 5% of the course grade and 5% of the 20% of the overall assignment grade. The final submission counts for 15%. And here's the rubric that will be used on the assignment. You'll notice that the brainstorm, outline, and peer review each count for 1 point, and the rough draft counts for 2. These equal 5. And here's the final exam rubric. It adds up to 15 points or 15% of the course grade. You must have a clearly focused introduction. It sets the tone for the paper, provides an overview of what to expect in the remainder of the paper. I often encourage students to start with an engaging story or scenario or some kind of personal experience, and then to tie that into their purpose for teaching social studies. So for instance, you might end your introduction section by saying, in this paper, I will write about my purpose for teaching social studies, which is, and then you insert your purpose. I will achieve this purpose by using strategies such as in my teaching, and highlight 3 strategies that best reflect that purpose you have for teaching social studies. I encourage you to have this clearly focused introduction be about a half page in length. And then next is the well-supported purpose. An overall purpose for social studies is identified and addressed in a comprehensive, clearly stated, manageable manner. I will highlight in more detail in Module 3 what this means, but make sure that you're highlighting a very broad idea, such as you are teaching for democratic citizenship. You're trying to promote multicultural ideas in your teaching, and then highlight literature that supports those ideas and define it. You want to define clearly what you mean by this purpose. What is democratic citizenship? What is multiculturalism? A purpose for teaching social studies is not to teach the content to students, because that is a base responsibility of your job. No matter what you are teaching, whatever subject you are teaching, whatever grade level, or even whatever purpose you have for teaching social studies, a base responsibility is to teach the SOLs. And so that unto itself is not a purpose for teaching social studies. That's a main requirement of your job. It's the how and why you are teaching that material that matters to me in this paper. Next is the achievement of the purpose. So you should identify 3 or more ways in which you will achieve the stated purpose. So for instance, if you are teaching democratic citizenship, appropriate strategies might be things like building a classroom community, use of discussion. Those are appropriate strategies for that. Multicultural ideas and trying to create a multicultural curriculum, you're going to highlight using a wide range of children's literature texts that utilize students' backgrounds and experiences. Those two components account for 3 points each on the assignment, which is, you'll note, they're weighted differently on the assignment. Finally, you will have a well-formulated conclusion that ties the whole paper together. And again, I should note that introduction should be about a half page in length. The purpose should be about 2 pages in length. The achievements, the 3 strategies, should be about 2 pages in length. And your conclusion should be about a half page in length. Now, that's for an undergraduate. If you're a grad student, the length will be slightly more for each of the sections. Next, you'll be graded on how well you follow APA conventions. So do you have headers and subheaders? Are you using APA style in the reference section and text citations? Do you have an appropriate reference list? That's again why I would encourage you to use the OWL Purdue APA website, because it provides guidance for how to cite and how to structure your paper. I'll also be providing examples from students in the past who've written exemplary papers for this course, so you can get an idea of how the structure should be. But I also provide a template for you so you can see that structure away from student examples. You'll also be graded on your writing, so you need to make sure that the paper is clearly written with few grammatical mistakes, and that you have limited extraneous words, passive voice, or run-on sentences. So you'll be encouraged to provide feedback on the writing in the peer review of the 1-page draft, and I will also provide feedback on writing in the 2-page draft. And finally, you'll be graded on the formatting. So full credit means all formatting requirements were met. Did you meet the page minimum? Did you have Times New Roman, 12-point font, double spacing, and 1-inch margins? So collectively, that rubric right there counts for 15% of the course grade. Added in with the draft, you have 20% of the course grade with this final exam assignment. As I noted, there are multiple components for this assignment. The 4 draft stages, you will be using the final exam groups page. You'll be assigned to groups of 5, and you'll be asked to post your activities assignments in the final exam groups page, where you'll provide feedback to your peers, and you can provide and receive support from a small group of colleagues throughout this course for the final exam. If you have any questions about the assignment, please do not hesitate to email me at bmbutler@odu.edu.